טוב, קוראים לי גדי, אני רכז המחקר של מרכז פדרמן לחקר הסייבר, וגם רשמתי פה למעלה כל מי שאי פעם שילם על זה, וזה באוניברסיטה העברית. אני מסיים את הדוקטורט במשפטים, וזה אחד משלושה מאמרים שיהיו במסגרת הדוקטורט. Sorry. My name is Gadi Perl. I'm the research coordinator for the Federman Cybersecurity Research Center in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. This is part of my 3 articles, which is supposed to be part of my doctorate in the regulation of artificial intelligence. I try to take technology and the wonderful things you guys write about and make lawyers understand what you're writing about. And let's see what works here. So, I think everybody was here 7 years ago when they promised that within 2 years we'll see fully autonomous vehicles, and then a year later when they promised that within 2 years, and I guess it's the same promise we'll hear for the next 2 years, that fully autonomous vehicles are on their way. And it seems it's not going to happen, and instead we're hearing more about the shift to semi-autonomous vehicles. And we saw the official publications coming out of Mercedes, BMW, Tesla, which at the end of the day are talking about the implementation of semi-autonomous vehicles at some level or another to public roads. Now, given that that's the fact, then writing about the legal ramification about fully autonomous vehicles becomes futurism, and it's part of my job to talk about the legal ramifications about semi-autonomous vehicles. And that actually becomes the problem, and we'll talk about it. I think to this group, I'm going to get away from that one. To this group, I don't really need to talk about what is semi-autonomous. Let's just say it's level 3 autonomy according to the SAE. It means we still need a human driver, but there is intermittent periods, changing in lengths of time and different situations in which the car systems can take control of the vehicle in limited circumstances. But this causes problems. This causes problems from a legal and also practical point of view, and let's talk about them for a moment. Nowadays, it's very dichotomous. You know who's liable in any case of an accident with your car? The driver. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, even things that happen in the car not directly in his control, he's still responsible. Somebody in the backseat didn't buckle up, the driver is responsible. Everything, the driver is responsible. It's the premise of most of vehicle safety regulation. The driver is responsible and is to blame also on a criminal level. So if we want to change that, we need to understand how we're going to change. Now, when we thought about fully autonomous vehicles, where we talked about changing from the human to some sort of other system. But semi-autonomous vehicles is what we call in Arabic nishtahir nishtaher. And that creates a problem because we're not really sure. Because if we're going to leave liability in the human driver, then he will do what Tesla drivers did in their semi-autonomous vehicles. You remember the accidents when you saw the human driver created systems which were overrun Tesla's safety features, and he would put a newspaper, and then it wouldn't. And then there was accidents, and of course Tesla also did the trick of dismantling the automatic systems 1 second before an accident, so they could say that the autonomous systems weren't in charge at the moment of the accident. So creating a liability system which is dichotomous, either here, either there, is a problem, both for legal reasons, right? We're not sure who's in charge. But we're also, it creates practical because it creates too much will of the systems to throw a liability at the nearest, well, the one with the lowest ability to defend himself in any case of an event. And we want to solve that, we want to help that, because we understand that semi-autonomous vehicles is actually a good thing. I had a conversation with Droben David, I think most of you know him from the Ministry of Transportation, who says we have a lacking of bus drivers. And we need more bus drivers. But then there is a Regulation 168 where they can only drive 4 hours, and then they need a break, and then another 3 hours. But what happens if you can take a bus driver and tell him, listen, 2 hours into your driving, you can actually study. Nobody will listen, and nobody will take care. You can look at your computer. So there is a lot of potential in creating a right mechanism of a liability. But the problem is that sharing liability isn't that simple. How do you solve when the car is in charge or when the human driver is in charge? And a lot of the legal systems have created a new situation where it's not really clear what we're talking about. And I'm going to give an example for a second. So existing regulatory systems are, well, you have either old legislation, which hasn't changed to autonomous driving at all. You have legislation which has allowed for some sort of testing. And you have had studies when they have tried to adapt, but not specifically given a good answer. So, and think that by mistake, they have wonderful things written by the people before me, Felix, Avishag, about teleoperation. By sheer luck, British law allowed, in the previous version, teleoperation of vehicles. Because it said the driver had to operate the vehicle, but it didn't say they had to do it within the vehicle. But that was sheer luck. In Israel, we didn't have that. And you had other systems, and it became complicated. That's why we lawyers are here, to make things complicated, so you will need us and pay us money. So we had 3 different legal systems which tried to adapt their legal systems to allow for these new types of vehicles. We had the Germany, which was the most specific one, which allowed for semi-autonomous vehicles, and it said that if you achieve a certain level and succeeded in convincing the whatever ministry there that you can, then a driver is allowed not to look at the road while certain systems are in charge. That's what the law said. Israeli law didn't care about semi-autonomous vehicles at all. The regulator in Israel cared about ADAS, right? ADAS, autonomous. And they wanted only systems which are shared and electric. They didn't want semi-autonomous. It doesn't help them. The new legal system in Israel was only dichotomous, is only dichotomous. And then you had the UK autonomous, which was, it's a draft. It's not yet there. Maybe within the next 3 weeks it won't be a draft. It's hard to track. But I also try to create the situation, what happens when the level 3 autonomous systems are in charge. But there's a problem. Let's talk about the problems. The first problem is AI and people think differently. We don't look at things the same. It's difficult to understand. So let's say I'm driving a level 3 autonomous system, and I'm not looking at the road, and at some point I get a notification, you're in charge now because we think there's going to be an accident within 10 seconds. Why? Where? How do I understand? Is 10 seconds enough to take control? And then come near doers research about the people overestimating their ability to control the autonomous systems, to oversight. We think too highly of ourselves. We also think too highly of ourselves as good drivers. So this creates 2 problems. We don't know how to take control of the vehicles, and when we do take control of the vehicles, we think we're going to do a better job than we're actually going to do. So I want the person to take charge of the vehicle, but I want to do it the right way. So all of these laws haven't thought about it, or haven't at least given any direct instructions. What is the new role of the human operator? He's not the driver anymore, right? Because he's not driving at the second, but he's going to be a driver. He's some sort of a potential operator. What does this mean? Can he go to sleep? Can he start hearing music? Can he put on makeup? Can he put up his contact lenses? We need to answer this. Can we allow students to study during driving? I think it's a good thing, right? We're stuck in traffic anyway. Let's make good time of it. So, I'm not going to go too much into the lawyer things, This is not for this group. It's for me to be able to publish later on during my PhD. But I am going to say this. Normal mechanisms for creating liability are not applicable in these cases, because we have a liability in case of manufacturer defects. But in level 3 autonomy, it's not a manufacturer defect. The system worked correctly, right? It said, I can control in this situation, take charge. So it's not a defect. It's not shared liability like we have in an operation, right? In an operation, you have about 3 doctors. This one is in charge of anesthetics. This one is digging into your brain. And this one is in charge of cleaning the blood. At least everybody knows what they do. But here it's not clear, because we have both people supposed to do something at a different time, and the cooperation between them isn't simple. And of course, it's not 2 different doctors, right? One is a human-specific operator. Another is a corporate created, trained, deep learning-based algorithmic system, which at best nobody understands. And then, of course, you have foreseeability. We're not sure what it's supposed to be. I think this is the main question. What do we do? How do we adapt? In what sense? We know the potential is great. We know that the legal system is lacking. And we know that our current legal systems don't have really good solutions. So what do we propose? This is oversimplification. What I had in mind when I started the research is a relay race. You know, relay race where you have 4 people running the 100-meter dash. And when you want to move control and move the baton from one person to the other, it's not that one stops and then the other starts running. If you want to transfer control, right, the first one starts running, and then they reach the same speed, and only after that control is provided, right? You give that what creates efficiency. And I thought to myself, let's take that mechanism and copy that towards the cooperation between the machine and the human being. Let's create a system that tells the person in advance, now you are supposed to take control. So I had to translate that very nascent thought into something that will actually work. And then I thought that, first of all, on a legal basis, we have to create a supervisory role. You're not a driver anymore, so you don't have to look at the road. But there are changing levels of awareness you need to keep. You can't go to sleep, because in no system, 0, 3, 7, whatever, can you take control. The second is, and this is a problem which people talked about, the problem of deep learning, you don't understand the machine and it thinks differently from human beings. So we had to create a system that, or at least force people from a regulatory point of view to create a mechanism of discourse between the human driver and the operating machine. Listen, I can't take control of the machine now because we're nearing a junction which is too complicated for me. Because there is a ball 15 meters ahead and I'm not sure if it's a ball or it's the head of a little child. It's possible, right? Recognition patterns tend to get wrong sometimes. And because of that, we need to create a system which tells the person who may have not been looking, may have been listening to music, may have been studying, listen, there's an unregistered body coming from this place to this place, please take notice, you're going to take charge. We had to create a system of data provision, constantly telling the driver what's his situation. I forgot I was being photographed, though I did tuck in my shirt. So he can take control. And of course, we talked about the need for regulatory adoption. And this, I have the luck now of talking specifically after Avishag and Felix, because teleoperation is the continuing idea here. Let's say you have a semi-autonomous vehicle, and now you're talking about how to create a discourse between the human operator and what he sees, between the machine and how it behaves. teleoperation is one of the things I'm going to tell regulators, look at this. Look at what information is required from a person to assume control of a machine. What is required is basic for this kind of a new regulatory system. And I think we need to make sure that regulators are aware. Now, it's easier said than done, of course, because you need to create regulation which is, on the one hand, very clear, and on the other hand, agile enough to maintain the changes of technology, which are very quick. But easily, it's not the problem in this specific research. It's a problem for another research. And I see that I've been speaking for 15 minutes, so I did my job. Thank you. Yes, Felix.
So thank you for the interesting talk. So let's say what we suggest to work with discrete commands in the operation. Everybody are welcome to take a look at the poster. But let's say you give a command, bypass from right. You have an obstacle, you give a command. At this point, right, you gave a command, use a tail operator, and then from there the vehicle takes control and does the low-level maneuver. How would you address it from your perspective? Like, who is responsible? Is the tail operator responsible, or the vehicle responsible? It's called shit.
If the machine, if you told, then what I think what would be, should be the regulation, this is part of what we're talking about that should be done, but it's really nascent, so it's difficult to go into the detail. The question is, what did the human operator know when he gave the instructions? Did the machine tell him, this is the problem, this is what I think should be done, these are the ramifications, and then the human operator achieved the decision according to the knowledge he had in the same situations, he would be fully liable.
So the tail operator in this case?
It really doesn't matter. From a legal standpoint, it doesn't matter if it's a teleoperator or one physically in the car. Right? He assumed control. If he had enough information and there was no technical problem, he's the operator. From a legal standpoint, I don't really care as long as you have enough information and it's been standardized. If it's a machine or a human being, as long as it's somebody specific which took responsibility at the same moment.
You have another question? Please.
He's in charge.
Yes, please.
I want to ask, so in the future for the vertical, the automated vertical, suppose it's a platform, and then they have something like the apps, the assisting apps on top of that, something like what we are doing on the mobile phone. For example, to assist how the driver's performance or to predict the accident, something like that. Okay, let's say in this kind of business model, okay, so now the liability is separated to three parts. Okay, the machine, okay, the vertical, the driver, and the third party service to assist the driver, yeah, to handle the road situation. So if anything happens, how to identify the liability?
Actually, this is the existing legal system where we said you're not allowed to put into a vehicle any system which hasn't been authorized and to make sure that it works under the circumstances. It only gives recommendations, and in any situation where the human person was technically in charge, he's in charge of everything. In that aspect, I think we shouldn't change it. We shouldn't create more ambiguity and enter a third party into the situation. Leave it. The moment the person says, I assume control, he should assume full control. Allowing for shared, I began at calling it the shared liability mechanism, but the research itself concludes that shared liability should not exist. There should be a clear division of liability. Either the machine or the person. One should have enough data while receiving the decision, but it should be very clear.
Okay.
We should move on. Very good question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.